something like 52 million Americans have now owned or have transacted in a cryptocurrency or digital asset. And the crypto voter spoke with a very loud voice, Anthony, just a few weeks ago in November. And I think what we're going to see over time, not necessarily on day one, but over time, are sensible rules from agencies like the SEC to govern how securities transactions involving digital assets can be offered lawfully here in the United States. I think we're going to see new legislation passed by Congress in short order that defines a market structure for crypto and provides for rules for things like stable coins in ways that will promote those innovations. And then I do think, though, that it's important to acknowledge the other element that you touched upon, which is there's just a more productive, positive attitude among so many of the nominees and individuals who've been elected to office in the last several weeks and months. They understand they have a responsibility to keep Americans safe and to make sure that consumers are protected. But they want to see crypto flourish here in the United States. They're looking around the world. They're seeing other countries, other jurisdictions race ahead with sensible rules, sensible standards. Governments are encouraging crypto developers and companies to come build in their countries. And these American elected and appointed officials are saying, what are we doing? We invented much of this stuff here in the US. Why are we giving away this commercial and strategic advantage for no apparent reason? And I think we're going to see a return to a more balanced view and a more pro-America, pro-innovation view that applies to crypto as much as any other technology in ways that's going to be extremely productive and exciting.
What you're talking about there is, I think, innovations and advancements in rulemaking and in the actual, like the rulemaking process, but also the rules themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Another area that's interesting is we talked about Coinbase's kind of legal team and your ability to not only defend Coinbase, to participate in various legal cases for Coinbase. Also, you are helping people in the industry, but you guys do it in a very unique way. Brian will get on Twitter and he'll fire off a thread and he's, communicating directly. I've seen you tweet, a lot about certain cases and explain directly to people, here's what's going on. Here's our position. Here's what we think should happen. It feels like it is a strategy shift over the last couple of years to talk directly to the industry, to the market. Why? And is it working?
Look, I will say I do think we have a unique approach to engaging with the crypto community at Coinbase. I think a lot of it has to do with Brian's vision that in this modern climate, in this modern media environment, we have the tools available now to go directly to our customers and to community members and to speak to them as peers, as opposed to top down and through intermediaries. I will tell you, Anthony, I'm now in my third decade of practicing law, and I love being a lawyer every day, and I'm proud to be the chief legal officer at Coinbase. Never in my wildest dreams when I took this job do I imagine that so much of the most important advocacy I would be engaged in would be in the form of a tweet or a post on LinkedIn or in having a conversation on a podcast, as opposed to in court at the podium making formal arguments. It's critically important that the crypto community understand where Coinbase stands, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And so I think Brian, more than anybody else, has made it clear that part of our responsibility is not just doing the work, which of course is critically important, but explaining the work. And there's no better way to explain it than to get on X and post about it, to come on podcasts like yours and talk about it. And so that's a big part of what we do.
One of the things that you all have recently directly communicated is you will not be engaging any external law firms that hire individuals who were complicit in this kind of abrasive behavior. Explain a little bit as to like the revolving door and like how this works. And then very rare for a company to take this position, but was quickly followed up with a number of other exchanges and businesses saying, hey, we're signing on as well. How do you see this playing out?
Well, you mentioned the revolving door, and this is a long-standing tradition in Washington, D.C. of people going into government, regulating industries for a period of time, and then leaving government to go represent those same industries in interactions and against the very agencies that they were just working at. That's the way things have worked in Washington for many, many decades. Crypto prides itself, Coinbase certainly does, in doing things its own way, and I think in a more principled way than maybe some others. And so when Brian Armstrong, our CEO, observed this practice and saw that it had now come to crypto, and that many of the individuals responsible for this regulation by enforcement campaign at the SEC were now leaving the SEC, going to law firms and approaching us, asking to represent us in our engagements with that same agency, the SEC, that they had just been working at. It struck him as off. It struck him as unprincipled. And even though there were many who counseled us that this is exactly the way you play the game, you go hire the people who just left the agencies to go talk to their friends and their peers to represent you. He said, we're not going to do it that way. And it not only struck him as unprincipled, it struck him as, contributing to this, this swamp that so many across the country have had such a negative reaction to. So Brian and Coinbase, we just want to have any part of that. The piece of this, though, where we went a little further, I think is that we not only said to ourselves we weren't going to be a part of this, we thought it was important to be very public and explicit in sharing that view with the wider legal community and the wider business community, so that everybody understood clearly where Coinbase stood. And so that's why we spoke so explicitly about this. And I will confess, I was a little anxious about that, because it's just not normally how things are done. But I've come to learn over working for many years now with Brian that that's not ultimately what matters. What matters is what's right. And the reaction, the response from others, including many others in crypto, to following our lead, has been extraordinarily supportive and positive. And that's been a tremendously gratifying for us as a company.
What are the things that you're looking forward to in 2025 as milestones? Obviously Trump assumes office, new SEC chair. What else is kind of on that list?
Well, we're very excited about Paul Atkins at the SEC. In large part because Mr. Atkins is a man of integrity. His reputation within the legal community, but in the broader business community, is one of integrity. And we just think he's going to bring a semblance of balance and measure to the SEC that's been missing for the last 3.5 years under Gary Gensler. Certainly the election of Donald Trump, I think, suggests that we're going to have a much more pro-crypto attitude across the federal government. And if anybody was in Nashville the way I was when President Trump gave that speech, there was no doubt about what he was going to do if he won that election. And I think we're going to see support for legislation that I mentioned. I think we're going to see support for a fresh look at all these lawsuits that have been filed against crypto, and asking basically, is this really in the public's interest? Is this really in the interest of the country in supporting and developing a strong cryptocurrency industry here in the U.S.? And all that has me very positive and encouraged. But the main thing I'm very excited about, Anthony, is I think 2025 is going to be the last year where guys like you are going to want to talk to guys like me. And what I mean by that is the lawyers, the regulators, the policymakers, people who do what I do every day. We've had to take a more prominent role in the conversation around crypto over the last several years because of all the hostility from the U.S. government. I'm hopeful that with new laws, new rules, and more of a balance at the various agencies, the lawyers are going to be, frankly, much less interesting. And we can go back to why so many people got into crypto in the first place, to build, to create. And we'll continue to do our work, but we'll do so in a much less prominent way.
Well, I appreciate you coming here. I'll want to talk to you anyway. So even if everyone else doesn't want to, I want to. I think that it'd be very easy for you all to just focus on Coinbase and build the business, kind of keep your head down, hire the people coming out of the agencies, and frankly, not fight. Right, is kind of the way I think about it. And there's a lot of businesses that have done that for a long time. But I do think that it takes kind of a principled stance to do what you guys are doing. I'm sure it's harder. I'm sure it's maybe the lawyers think it's more fun, but probably there's more headaches along the way as well. I think it's important work, right? And one of the things that I've said it on national television, I've said it on this podcast a million times, is the beauty of the American justice system is that both sides get to hire lawyers. They go into a courtroom and they argue their best case, and a decision is made, whether it's by a jury or a judge. Most of the times they get it right. Sometimes they don't, but there's appeals and there's, all the stuff. And probably more so than not, we end up getting it right. And that process is something that is frankly pretty unique to the United States compared to many places around the world. But but we need people who are willing to go and put together the arguments and go in there and debate, right?
For sure.
And I'm glad that you're doing it. I'm glad that Coinbase as a company is doing it. But also I think that it is having the appetite is one thing, but doing it and doing it well is kind of a whole nother thing. And so maybe you guys will be focused on different things in 2025 if some of the regulatory stuff changes. But either way, it feels like you guys will still be there in the fight, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. We're not going anywhere, and there's a lot of work ahead for sure in Congress, in the courts, and in general, making sure that we have sensible rules for crypto here in the United States for all of our benefit. But it's not just a privilege and an honor. It's a lot of fun, and it's meaningful that my team and I get to work at a company and in an industry that takes its responsibilities seriously and a commitment to the rule of law seriously. So we're going to keep fighting, but hopefully in a much more positive way.
Given my many interactions with the legal team and the compliance team at not only our companies, but other companies, I know not to ask you for a Bitcoin prediction price. So we'll leave it there. Where can we send people to find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter. I am Paul Grewal. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on podcasts like this one. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much.